So thank you so much, Dr. Fraad, for being here with me today.
I'm delighted to be here.
I've interviewed you, as you know, several times, but I thought it's time now to interview you in person. And to that, I was thinking about exploring a few issues with you on Palestine and the pro-Palestinian solidarity movement we're seeing here in the US, including some really interesting insights you've made over the last month or so regarding young people and their engagement in pro-Palestinian solidarity in the US. So hoping we can cover that and some of your work in gender and how we might see that playing out in the movement and, of course, political economy, if we can make sense of, for example, the Israeli assault on Gaza in terms of capitalism, in addition to racism, colonialism, everything else that we're familiar now. Hearing people talk about the ongoing assault in terms of so the very interesting observation you made recently about how in all your life you have never seen this kind of groundswell of support, particularly among young people, for Palestine, and how that might connect with how young people feel about being cared about or not being cared about within American society. I thought that was a very interesting connection you made. So maybe you can speak to that. And
I'd like to.
yes,
I'd like to because the UN just put out its World Happiness Report.
yes,
And unlike the United States fell from the top 10, it's no longer the top 10 happiest countries. And those, what they ask are questions like, are you satisfied with your life? Are you satisfied with your future? And it's one of the only countries in the world where young people are more pessimistic than their elders.
okay,
And one of the things that's happened is that the doors of opportunity for young people are closing on their fingers.
mm-hmm.
It's in the 1950s, we were the world's hegemonic power. Everyone else was destroyed. Now the American empire is going down, and the money that was afoot has been appropriated to the top, so that 90% of the wealth is owned by 1% of the population. And this is shocking because young people no longer have a future. Mm-hmm. And it used to be you could always get a good job if you were white and male, and you could get a job if you were white and female. Mm-hmm. And Black people could get a not good job if they were, male or female. Mm-hmm. Now jobs are not what they used to be, and pensions don't exist the way they used to, and the proletariat has been called the precariat. Right. Because young people don't have the sense that they could establish anything and it will grow with them. I have a client who kind of personifies it. She said she rents everything in her apartment because she knows that she'll eventually have to leave, and she wants everything to fit into a car.
Yes.
Well, it's a different approach than thinking you'll have a job, you'll get seniority, you'll be recognized, you'll get a pension. No, that's all gone. And young people identify with the dispossessed as the settler colonialism that is Israel dispossessed the Palestinians and is now killing them off. Mm-hmm. And so that they identify, first of all, they identified with Black Lives Matter. Yeah. After George Floyd was strangled to death with a cop's knee on his mm-hmm. neck until he died. And a young 17-year-old girl or woman videotaped it and put it on the internet. Yes. And so the United States got to see the basic lynching of a Black man whose offense was selling loose cigarettes on the street. Mm-hmm. And that really increased the racial awareness that led to the Black Lives Matter movement, which was not only a minority movement, it was a huge movement of Blacks and whites together. and the Palestinians are non-white, and in some sense, and their land has been stolen in 1948 when the United States decided to give the Jews a homeland, but somebody else's land is what they decided to give, a dubious gift for the Palestinians who lived there for centuries.
Yes.
And so that the dispossessed youth of America identifies with the dispossessed population of Gaza that's being destroyed. And also the United States no longer sees itself as this island of possibility and beauty and freedom
Right.
that we did after World War II and in the 50s and to some extent in the 60s, but that's over. And they don't have the kind of future we had as older people. 60% of young people under 30 are living with their parents or being supported by them because they can't make the money. Their parents are buying them, let's say, a car because they need a car for work, or helping them pay their healthcare expenses. And that's across the board. So American people, young people, are being dispossessed like the Palestinians have been. And it's remarkable because Americans used to be much more insular. That's the first struggle that I am aware of in which millions are mobilized because of a foreign injustice,
Yes.
because it feels so immediate. It's not only men that are in the Free Palestine movement. All young people feel dispossessed. And one of the factors that makes people feel hope for the future is if they see young people with opportunities, but they don't.
You know, so much of your work, as you know, of course, is to do with the nature of relationships, sort of you alluded to right now, and healthy relationships. Do you see any new opportunities for that are unique within the pro-solidarity movements, whether in America or elsewhere, and what that might look like, and whether it promotes a kind of mutual respect between men and women? And I ask in part because you are an expert in gender relations, and I haven't heard really much about this issue in the last few months.
Well, it's a very important issue
Yes.
because one of the big markers of mental illness is disconnection with other people. They say of every one of the mass shooters, he was a loner, right?
Yes.
Because if you're connected with other people and your feelings for other people, it's much less easy to randomly shoot them,
Yes.
pretty obviously. And one of the things that has happened is that men have become disconnected, and the way to connect people the ways that are vibrant now are, first of all, unions. Martin Luther King said the best weapon against racism is unions, because you're in it together. And that's men and women and people of color and people of different nationalities are in it together as workers. And so that it's a huge mental health boost.
Yes.
Americans are lonely. There have been repeated studies that started with Robert Putnam and then have been repeated. There are less Americans connected to any social organization now than were in bowling leagues alone in 1970. Because people are isolated in front of their own TV or in their own internet doing their own thing. And so that the solidarity producing forces like the Freedom for Palestine movements are enormously compelling because people are in it together and connected, and they see themselves as connected.
Yes.
Instead of as isolated and lonely and enraged. And that's so for unions, and it's so for political groups, and the contradictions get much more dramatic.
Yes.
At Columbia University, there's a good illustration. Columbia University students are mobilized on the Palestinian issue. But Columbia suspended the Jewish Voice for Peace and other organizations for Free Palestine.
Yes.
The news uncovered, not the main news, but the internet uncovered that they did that partially in response to a $50 million gift from one of their donors who was pro-Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And so that heated up the contradictions of capitalism
Yes.
buying the university and got students even more upset. Just today, they suspended 2 organizations because they said that they supported terrorism because they were a pro-Palestinian organization.
Yes.
So these things are heating up, and the people who are students at Columbia University are young people facing a future which is uncertain and precarious, and identify with the Palestinians
Yes.
who are systematically discriminated against and face a dismal future.
I'm very curious as a psychologist and a therapist, and it connects with the contradictions that you're talking about, I feel. When pro-Palestinians are criticized, it's quite demeaning.
Yes.
Right? Nobody wants to be an anti-Semite. And if you keep drilling that into someone, so just because they support Palestinian liberation, it could be conceivably traumatic.
Yes, it
Yes.
can be. And
Yes.
they're trying to cast pro-Palestinian feeling
Right.
as anti-Semitism,
Yes.
which is, bias against a whole group.
Yes.
And that's why they particularly go after groups like the Jewish Voice for Peace,
Yes.
which is one of the most militant pro-Palestine organizations. They occupied the Statue of Liberty. They occupied Grand Central Station.
Mhm.
They were right there for the Thanksgiving parade, and they're everywhere. And so are other Jewish organizations. So it makes their argument questionable,
Yes.
because there are probably, there's a whole rabbinical rabbi convocation for a ceasefire, so that they're trying to cast a community that is divided
Yes.
as anti-Semitic versus people who are Jewish, which is completely bizarre. And of course there are anti-Semites around,
Yes.
but that doesn't relate to Palestine.
Right.
And the way they counteract those attempts at shame
Right.
is with unity and moral outrage
Yes.
at what the genocide is happening, particularly sniping at children.
Yes.
1 out of 10 Palestinian children hasn't got the use of their legs anymore
Yes.
because they've been bombed or sniped at
Yeah.
by Israeli soldiers. And so that the moral outrage counteracts the attempt to shame.
Yes. Yes. It's almost as if it just diverts attention totally away from the material reality.
So thank you for
Yeah, no,
inviting
thank
me.
you. Yes, a pleasure is mine.
Good, and mine
Okay.
too.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
so long.
Yes.